Poor boy stops Donald Trump from entering a sabotaged elevator. What happened next is shocking. The streets of Manhattan buzzed with their usual energy-honking taxis, rushing pedestrians, and the distant hum of skyscraper construction. In the heart of it all stood Trump Tower, a symbol of wealth and ambition. Donald Trump sat in his expansive office on the top floor, reviewing a stack of documents. The city's skyline sprawled out beyond the glass walls, but Trump barely noticed it. He had more pressing concerns. His political ventures were causing waves in the media, and his personal life felt like a sinking ship. His wife, Anna, had grown distant. Their conversations, once full of energy, had devolved into tense exchanges and icy silences. "Mr. Trump," his secretary's voice crackled through the intercom, "your car is ready." "Good," Trump replied curtly. He adjusted his tie, preparing to leave for an evening meeting. As he stepped into the elevator lobby, he was stopped by a voice, young, shaky, and determined. "Mr. Trump, wait!" Trump turned to see a boy no older than 13, with scruffy clothes and wide, nervous eyes. The boy was clutching a worn backpack. "What do you want, kid?" Trump asked, his tone more curious than annoyed. The boy hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. "I need to tell you something. It's important." Trump frowned. "I don't have time for this. Go home." "Please," the boy insisted, stepping closer. "Your elevator. It's not safe. Someone messed with it. If you use it, you could die." For a moment, Trump said nothing. He studied the boy, searching for signs of a prank or a scam. "What's your name?" "Pedro," the boy said. "Pedro, you're wasting my time. Who put you up to this?" "No one." Pedro's voice cracked, and his eyes welled up. "I heard them talking. They said you wouldn't survive if you took the elevator tonight." Trump's skepticism wavered. There was something raw and honest about Pedro's desperation, but Trump was not a man to be easily rattled. "All right," Trump said after a pause. "If you're lying, I'll make sure you regret it. But if you're not—" He didn't finish the sentence. Later that evening, Trump stood in his office, his phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what it takes," he barked to the head of maintenance. "Check the damn elevator, now." The minutes dragged as he waited for a report. Trump paced the room, his mind oscillating between irritation and unease. Finally, his phone buzzed. "Mr. Trump," the technician's voice was grim. "We found something. The cables were tampered with, deliberately. If you'd used the elevator, it could have been catastrophic." Trump's chest tightened. Pedro's warning hadn't been a lie. Someone wanted him dead. "Fix it immediately," Trump ordered, his voice cold. "And don't let anyone know about this." He hung up and stared out at the city lights, his reflection faintly visible in the glass. For the first time in years, Donald Trump felt vulnerable. The next morning, Trump summoned Pedro to his office. The boy arrived, fidgeting nervously with the strap of his backpack. "Sit down," Trump said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Pedro obeyed, his eyes darting around the luxurious office. "You were right," Trump admitted. "The elevator was sabotaged. How did you know?" Pedro swallowed hard. "I clean floors at night. Sometimes I hear things. 2 men were talking near the service entrance. They said something about the elevator and your wife." Trump froze. "Anna?" Pedro nodded. "They said she was helping them. I don't know why." Trump's jaw tightened. He dismissed Pedro with a curt, "Thank you." When Pedro left, Trump sank into his chair, his mind racing. Could Anna really be involved? Their marriage had been rocky, but this? The betrayal cut deeper than he wanted to admit. He picked up his phone and dialed a private investigator. "I need you to look into something," he said. His voice was low, but the anger beneath it was unmistakable. That night, Trump sat alone in his penthouse, nursing a glass of scotch. He replayed every argument, every cold glance, every moment when Anna seemed to retreat further into herself. Had he pushed her to this? Or was there something darker at play? The weight of betrayal settled on his shoulders, like a lead cloak. For the first time in a long time, Donald Trump didn't feel like the man in control. The sun dipped below the Manhattan skyline, casting long shadows over Trump Tower. In the penthouse, Donald Trump sat on a sleek leather chair, his mind racing. The faint hum of traffic below barely registered as he swirled a glass of scotch in his hand. The revelation about Anna's possible involvement in the sabotage gnawed at him. He glanced at the envelope on the coffee table, the initial report from the private investigator. He hadn't opened it yet. Part of him didn't want to. Finally, he leaned forward and tore it open. The first page was a summary. Trump's jaw tightened as he flipped through the pages. Photographs showed Anna sitting across from Jax, her face stern but unmistakably hers. Jax, his longtime business partner, had always been a slippery figure. Trump tolerated him for his sharp mind and strategic thinking, but he had never fully trusted him. Now it seemed his worst instincts about Jax were coming true. That evening, Trump confronted Anna in the penthouse. She was sitting by the fireplace, a book in her lap. When he entered, she glanced up, her expression guarded. "We need to talk," Trump said, his voice low but firm. Anna closed the book slowly. "About what?" "You've been meeting Jax," he said, holding up the photographs. "Care to explain?" Her face paled. For a moment she didn't respond, but then she straightened her back. "You've been spying on me?" "I had no choice," Trump shot back. "Someone tampered with the elevator, Anna. Someone tried to kill me. And now I find out you're meeting Jax behind my back?" Anna's hands trembled as she set the book aside. "I didn't know it would go this far." Trump's eyes narrowed. "Go this far? What are you talking about?" She stood, her voice rising with emotion. "Do you know what it's like to live with you, Donald? Everything is about power, control, your image. You don't see me anymore. I'm just, another piece of your empire." He stared at her, his expression unreadable. "That doesn't explain why you're conspiring with Jax to kill me." Anna shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "I never wanted to kill you. Jax said it was just a warning, something to make you step back, to make you realize you're not untouchable. But I should have known he had his own agenda." Trump's chest tightened. "Why?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Why would you do this to me?" She looked away, her voice trembling. "Because I wanted out. I thought if I helped Jax, I could escape this life. I've been suffocating, Donald." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. For all his bravado and ambition, Trump had never considered the emotional toll his lifestyle took on those around him. After a long silence, Trump said, "You're going to stay here. I'll handle Jax." Anna looked at him, her face a mixture of guilt and relief. "Donald, Enough," he interrupted. "We'll talk later. Right now, I need answers." He walked out of the room, his mind already racing with plans. Over the next few days, Trump worked with a trusted security team to dig deeper into Jax's activities. Pedro, the scrappy boy who had warned him, became an unexpected ally. Pedro had grown more comfortable in Trump's presence, though he still approached the businessman with a mix of awe and caution. "You're sure you heard Jax's name?" Trump asked Pedro one evening in his office. Pedro nodded. "Yeah, the two men were talking about him. They said he's the one pulling the strings." Trump leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "If Jax is behind this, he won't stop at the elevator. He'll have other plans." Pedro hesitated before speaking. "I could help. I could listen. People don't notice me when I'm cleaning. I could hear stuff." Trump studied the boy for a moment. "It's risky," he said finally. But if you're willing, I'll make sure you're protected." Pedro nodded firmly. "I want to help." Pedro's first assignment came the following night. Armed with a small recording device, he shadowed Jax to a high-end cafe. He watched from a distance as Jax met with an unidentified man. Pedro couldn't make out every word, but certain phrases sent chills down his spine. The elevator was just the beginning. We still have time to dismantle everything. The wife was a good distraction, but now we focus on phase 2. Pedro's heart pounded as he recorded the conversation. He knew Trump needed to hear this. Back at Trump Tower, Pedro relayed everything he'd heard. Trump listened intently, his expression darkening with each word. "Phase 2, he muttered. "Whatever they're planning next, we need to stop it." He placed a hand on Pedro's shoulder. "You did good, kid. Real good." Pedro beamed, his chest swelling with pride. For the first time in his life, someone saw his value. The next morning, Trump woke with a renewed determination. The betrayal he faced from Anna, the mounting evidence against Jax, and Pedro's discoveries fueled his resolve to get to the bottom of the conspiracy. In his penthouse office, Trump paced while speaking on the phone with his head of security, Malcolm Grant, a gruff, no-nonsense man with years of experience in counter-surveillance. "Malcolm, I need every detail on Jax. I don't care how deep you have to dig. Financial records, political connections, everything. I want to know what he's planning." "Understood, sir," Malcolm replied. "But if Jax is bold enough to target you, he won't stop there. We need to tighten your security." "I don't need tighter security," Trump snapped. "I need answers. Focus on Jax." Hanging up, Trump leaned on his desk, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. For years he had built his empire on shrewd decisions and calculated risks. But now, for the first time, he felt like he was playing defense. Meanwhile, Pedro had become something of an unofficial spy. Trump's trust in the boy grew with each new piece of information he provided. Pedro was street-smart, resourceful, and most importantly, invisible to those who underestimated him. One evening, Trump called Pedro into his office. The boy arrived, still nervous but noticeably more confident than before. "Sit down, kid," Trump said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Pedro obeyed, clutching his worn backpack. "You've been doing good work," Trump began. "But this thing with Jax, it's bigger than I thought. I'm going to need you to keep your ears open, understand?" Pedro nodded eagerly. "I'll do whatever I can." Trump leaned forward, his tone serious. "This isn't a game, Pedro. If Jax finds out what you're doing, he won't hesitate to come after you." "I know," Pedro said quietly. "But I want to help. You gave me a chance when no one else did." Trump's expression softened for a moment. "You've got guts, kid. I'll make sure you're protected." Over the next several days, Pedro followed Jax to various meetings across the city. Each time, he gathered snippets of conversations and passed them on to Trump. The picture they painted was chilling. Jax had been secretly funneling money into offshore accounts and forging alliances with some of Trump's most vocal political opponents. The elevator sabotage was just the beginning of a broader plan to dismantle Trump's empire piece by piece. One night, Pedro overheard a conversation that confirmed their worst fears. Jax was planning to leak sensitive documents that would expose Trump to public scrutiny and potentially destroy his political career. "They're ready to drop the files," one of Jax's associates said. "All we need is the green light." Pedro recorded the conversation and rushed back to Trump Tower. That evening, Trump decided it was time for another conversation with Anna. This time, he wanted the full truth. He found her in the penthouse living room, staring out at the city lights. She looked tired, almost defeated. "Anna," Trump said, his voice steady. She turned to face him, her expression wary. "What is it now, Donald?" "I know about the documents," he said, watching her closely. "Jax is planning to leak them. Did you know?" Her eyes widened, and for a moment he saw genuine fear. "No," she said quickly. "I swear I didn't know about that. I thought it was just about scaring you, making you rethink your decisions. But this—" She shook her head. Trump studied her carefully. "If you're lying to me, Anna, there won't be a second chance." "I'm not lying," she said, her voice trembling. "I made a mistake, Donald. I was angry, and I let Jax manipulate me. But I never wanted this." He believed her, but the betrayal still stung. "Stay out of this," he said coldly. "If you get involved again, I won't protect you." Anna nodded silently, tears streaming down her face. Trump called a late-night meeting with Malcolm and his inner circle. The team gathered in a secure conference room in Trump Tower, the atmosphere tense. "Jax is planning to leak documents that could ruin me," Trump said, his tone sharp. "We need to stop him before he has the chance." Malcolm nodded. "We've traced some of his movements to a private server. If we can gain access, we might be able to retrieve the files before they're leaked." "Do it," Trump ordered. "And I want Jax under surveillance around the clock. If he so much as breathes wrong, I want to know." The next day, Pedro took it upon himself to shadow Jax again. He followed him to a luxury hotel and managed to sneak into the lobby unnoticed. From a hidden corner, Pedro overheard Jax discussing his next move with a high-ranking politician. "We release the files tomorrow," Jax said, his voice dripping with confidence. "By the time Trump knows what hit him, it'll be too late." Pedro's heart raced. He knew he had to act fast. Pedro left the luxury hotel in a rush, his mind racing. The weight of what he'd overheard was overwhelming, but he knew Trump needed this information immediately. Jax's plan to leak the documents was set for the next day, leaving them little time to act. Dodging traffic on the bustling Manhattan streets, Pedro arrived at Trump Tower breathless and anxious. The guards recognized him by now and waved him through. As he rode the elevator up, he clutched his recording device tightly, replaying Jax's words in his head. In his penthouse office, Trump was deep in thought when Pedro burst in, his face flushed. "Kid," Trump said, startled. "What's going on?" Pedro handed over the recording device, his hands trembling. "You need to hear this. Jax is planning to leak the documents tomorrow." Trump plugged the device into his computer, listening intently to the recorded conversation. Jax's smug tone, combined with the confirmation of his plans, made Trump's blood boil. "This son of a—" Trump muttered under his breath, slamming his fist onto the desk. Pedro flinched, but Trump quickly softened his tone. "You did good, Pedro. Real good." He picked up his phone and dialed Malcolm. "Malcolm," Trump said sharply, "I've got confirmation. Jax is releasing the files tomorrow. We need to act now." "We're already on it," Malcolm replied. "We've identified the server he's using to store the documents. My team is preparing to intercept them." "Good," Trump said. "But I want more than that. I want Jax. Make sure he doesn't get away with this." That night, Trump's team worked tirelessly to track Jax's movements and secure the leaked files. Malcolm coordinated with a trusted group of cybersecurity experts who managed to pinpoint the server hosting the sensitive information. Pedro, eager to help, stayed by Trump's side, offering whatever support he could. "Why do you trust me so much?" Pedro asked at one point, his voice hesitant. Trump glanced at him, his expression unreadable. "You've earned it," he said simply. "In a world full of liars and schemers, you've been honest. That's rare, kid." Pedro smiled, feeling a sense of pride he'd never experienced before. By early morning, Malcolm's team had successfully hacked into the server and retrieved the files. They discovered not only the documents Jax planned to leak, but also evidence of his broader conspiracy. Emails, financial transactions, and meeting logs painted a damning picture of Jax's betrayal. Trump reviewed the evidence with Malcolm in his office. "This is more than enough," "To take him down," Malcolm said. Trump nodded, but his expression remained grim. "Taking Jax down isn't enough. I need to make an example of him. He needs to know what happens when you cross me." Using the evidence they'd gathered, Trump and his team devised a plan to confront Jax publicly. They arranged a high-profile meeting at an exclusive club, ensuring that key players in the business and political worlds would be present. Pedro, despite Trump's initial objections, insisted on being there. "I need to see this through," Pedro said firmly. Trump relented, impressed by the boy's determination. The club was abuzz with chatter as Trump entered, flanked by Malcolm and Pedro. Jax was already there, seated at a corner table with a drink in hand. When he saw Trump approaching, his smug demeanor faltered for a moment before he regained his composure. "Donald," Jax said, standing to greet him. "What a surprise." "Cut the crap, Jax," Trump said, his voice cold. "I know everything." Jax's smirk faded. "I don't know what you're talking about." Trump placed a folder on the table and opened it, revealing the incriminating documents. "Care to explain this?" Jax glanced at the papers, his jaw tightening. "You've been busy," he said, his tone defiant. "But it doesn't matter. You can't stop what's coming." "Is that so?" Trump said, leaning in. "Because, from where I'm standing, your little plan just fell apart." Jax's expression darkened. "You think you've won, but you're wrong. I've got allies, Donald. People who want to see you fall just as much as I do." The tension in the room was palpable. Trump's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "If you think I'm going down without a fight, you're dumber than I thought." Suddenly Jax reached into his jacket pocket, his movements quick and threatening. But before he could act, Pedro, who had been watching closely, stepped forward and grabbed Jax's arm. "Not today," Pedro said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Security guards rushed in, disarming Jax and taking him into custody. The room erupted into chaos, but Trump remained calm, his gaze fixed on Jax. "You made a mistake, Jax," Trump said, "and now you're going to pay for it." With Jax arrested and his plans thwarted, Trump began to rebuild the trust that had been shaken by the conspiracy. Pedro, now a trusted confidant, continued to play a key role in Trump's inner circle. Anna, though still grappling with the fallout of her actions, made efforts to repair her relationship with Trump. It was a long road, but Trump was willing to try, for her sake and for the sake of the empire they had built together. As Trump stood in his office, looking out at the city below, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The betrayal had shaken him, but it had also reminded him of the importance of loyalty, trust, and resilience. And in Pedro, he found a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there were still people worth believing in. The dust had barely settled from Jax's dramatic arrest. Trump felt a brief sense of triumph, but knew the fight was far from over. Jax's defiance during their confrontation, coupled with his cryptic warning about powerful allies, lingered in Trump's mind. There was more to this conspiracy than a disgruntled business partner. Trump sat in his penthouse office, poring over the files Malcolm's team had recovered from Jax's server. Among the financial transactions and emails, one detail caught his eye: a series of payments to a shell company based overseas. "Malcolm," Trump said, summoning his head of security. "What's this company?" Malcolm examined the document, his brow furrowing. "It's a front, sir. Whoever's behind it is trying to stay hidden." "Find out who owns it," Trump ordered, "and do it fast." While Malcolm worked to unravel the shell company's origins, Pedro continued his own investigations. Trump had given him a permanent spot in the tower, ensuring he had access to resources and protection. One afternoon, Pedro remembered something from the recording he had made of Jax's conversation. "They still have time," one of Jax's associates had said. Pedro couldn't shake the feeling that this phrase held deeper meaning. Determined to find out more, he decided to visit some of the places where Jax had held meetings. At a high-end cafe in Midtown, Pedro blended in with the crowd, keeping his ears open. After hours of waiting, he overheard two men at a nearby table discussing Trump's downfall. "Phase 2 is already in motion," one man said. "And the wife was just the first step," the other replied. Pedro's heart raced. Anna's involvement wasn't an isolated incident. She had been part of a larger plan. When Pedro relayed what he had overheard to Trump, the businessman's expression darkened. "They're not done," Trump said. "Jax was just a pawn. Someone else is pulling the strings." Trump's mind raced through his list of enemies. There were many, rivals in business, politics, and media, but this felt personal. Malcolm returned later that evening with an update. "We traced the shell company to a network of offshore accounts," Malcolm said. "The money trail leads back to one of your old campaign advisors, Victor Reynolds." Trump's jaw tightened. Victor had been a key player in his earlier campaigns, but had left on bad terms after a heated disagreement about strategy. "Victor always hated the way I ran things," Trump said. "But I didn't think he'd stoop this low." Pedro chimed in. "Do you think he's working with Jax?" "Maybe," Trump said. "Or maybe he's the one giving orders." Determined to confront Victor, Trump arranged a meeting under the guise of discussing a business proposal. The meeting took place in a sleek conference room in one of Trump's properties, with Malcolm and Pedro discreetly observing from another room. Victor arrived, his demeanor smug. "Donald," Victor said, extending his hand. "It's been a while." "Too long," Trump replied coolly, motioning for him to sit. As they exchanged pleasantries, Trump steered the conversation toward politics and loyalty. "You've always had a knack for strategy, Victor," Trump said. "But tell me, what's your take on betrayal?" Victor's smile faltered slightly. "Betrayal? It's an ugly thing." "Agreed," Trump said, leaning forward. "Which is why I find it interesting that your name keeps popping up in connection with certain incidents." Victor's expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Trump slid a document across the table. "This is a record of payments from a shell company linked to you. Payments that funded an attempt on my life." Victor's face turned pale. "You have no proof." "Don't I?" Trump said, gesturing to Malcolm, who entered the room holding a laptop. On the screen were damning emails and transaction records connecting Victor to the conspiracy. Victor's composure cracked. "You don't understand," he said, his voice rising. "You've alienated too many people, Donald. You've made too many enemies." "Enemies like you?" Trump asked, his tone icy. Victor didn't respond, but the guilt in his eyes was answer enough. With Victor cornered, Trump pressed for more information. "Who else is involved?" Trump demanded. Victor hesitated, then finally spoke. "There's a group, a coalition of people you've crossed over the years. Politicians, business leaders, even media moguls. They want to see you destroyed." "And Jax?" "He was their way in," Victor admitted. "They used Anna to get close to you, but the plan was always bigger than just the elevator." As Victor revealed more details, Malcolm received a call from one of his operatives. The news was grim. Another attack was imminent. "They're planning to release a fabricated dossier," Malcolm said. "It's designed to discredit you and destroy your reputation." Trump's jaw tightened. "Then we stop them." Trump turned to Pedro. "You've been my eyes and ears on the ground. Can I count on you to help us again?" Pedro nodded without hesitation. "What do you need me to do?" "You're going to tail Victor," Trump said. "Find out where he goes and who he talks to. If there's another meeting, I want to know about it." Pedro sat in the back seat of the black SUV, his heart pounding. For the past 2 days, he had been shadowing Victor Reynolds at Trump's command. Victor's movements were calculated, his meetings covert, and his conversations guarded. But tonight, something felt different. Pedro had followed Victor to a private club in downtown Manhattan. The club, a haven for the city's elite, was heavily secured, with dark-tinted windows and guards stationed discreetly at every corner. Pedro, wearing an oversized hoodie and carrying a small recorder, slipped past the front entrance unnoticed. He kept a safe distance as Victor joined a group of well-dressed men and women in a secluded corner. Their hushed voices carried an air of urgency. "The dossier is ready," one man said. "Once it's released, Trump won't recover from the fallout." Victor nodded. "Good, but we need to ensure he doesn't have time to respond. The press conference will seal his fate." Pedro's hands shook as he recorded every word. The conspirators were finalizing their plan, and it was clear that the attack on Trump's reputation was imminent. Later that night, Pedro rushed back to Trump Tower. Trump was in his office, pacing back and forth while Malcolm reviewed the latest security updates. "Mr. Trump!" Pedro burst in, breathless. Trump turned, his expression hardening at the sight of Pedro's urgency. "What is it, kid?" Pedro played the recording, his voice trembling as he explained what he had witnessed. "They're planning to release the dossier tomorrow," Pedro said. "They said it's going to destroy you." Trump listened intently, his face a mask of controlled anger. When the recording ended, he clenched his fists. "They think they can outmaneuver me," Trump said, his voice low and dangerous. "They don't know who they're dealing with." Trump immediately called his legal and media teams into action. "We need to get ahead of this," he said. "If they're going public tomorrow, we need to discredit them before they get the chance." Malcolm nodded. "We'll focus on exposing the conspiracy. If we can prove the dossier is fabricated, it'll backfire on them." Pedro, still shaken, spoke up. "I'll help. I can keep following Victor, see if I can find more evidence." Trump placed a hand on Pedro's shoulder. "You've done enough, kid. Let us handle it from here." The next day, Trump held a press conference at one of his luxury hotels. The room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing as Trump took the podium. "I've always said the fake news media is out to get me," Trump began. "And today, I have proof. There's a coordinated effort to destroy my reputation, orchestrated by a group of cowards who hide in the shadows." Trump presented the evidence his team had gathered: financial transactions, emails, and recordings that exposed the conspiracy. The room buzzed with murmurs as reporters scrambled to process the information. Meanwhile, Malcolm's operatives were busy hacking into the servers hosting the fabricated dossier. Within hours, they uncovered metadata that proved the documents had been falsified. As the press conference unfolded, Trump received a call from Pedro. "Victor's at the club again," Pedro said, "and he's not alone. I think they're planning their next move." Trump's jaw tightened. "Stay put, kid. I'm coming." Trump arrived at the exclusive club with Malcolm and a small security team. The atmosphere inside was tense, the low hum of conversation masking the undercurrent of tension. Trump spotted Victor and his group in the same secluded corner. "Donald," Victor said, standing as Trump approached, "what brings you here?" "You know exactly why I'm here," Trump said, his voice cold. "I know about the dossier. I know about your little coalition. And I know you've been working to take me down." Victor's expression faltered, but he quickly regained his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about." Trump smirked. "Save it, Victor. I've got the evidence. Emails, recordings, financial transactions. It's all here." He placed a folder on the table, the contents spilling out for everyone to see. Victor's allies exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence wavering. "You're bluffing," Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Trump asked, his tone deadly. As the confrontation escalated, one of Victor's associates stood, his hand moving toward his jacket. Malcolm reacted instantly, signaling the security team to intervene. The man was disarmed, and the room erupted into chaos. Trump remained calm, his gaze fixed on Victor. "This is what happens when you betray me," Trump said. "You thought you could outsmart me, but you underestimated who you're dealing with." Victor, now visibly shaken, was taken into custody along with his associates. Amid the commotion, Pedro noticed another man attempting to slip away. Recognizing him from the meeting at the cafe, Pedro followed him outside and confronted him. "Stop right there," Pedro shouted, blocking the man's path. The man sneered. "Get out of my way, kid." But Pedro stood his ground, his determination unwavering. The man lunged at him, but Pedro dodged and managed to signal the security team. The man was apprehended, and Pedro's quick thinking prevented him from escaping. Back at Trump Tower, Trump commended Pedro for his bravery. "You've got guts, kid," Trump said. "You've proven yourself time and time again." Pedro beamed with pride, knowing he had made a difference. With Victor and his allies exposed, the conspiracy crumbled. The fabricated dossier never saw the light of day, and Trump's reputation, though bruised, remained intact. The sun rose over Manhattan, casting a golden glow over Trump Tower. The city below bustled with its usual energy, but within Trump's world, a profound transformation was underway. The chaos of betrayal and conspiracy had left its mark, but it also sowed the seed to change. Trump sat in his penthouse, staring out at the skyline. The confrontation with Victor and the unraveling of the conspiracy had taken its toll, not just on his business and political life, but also on his personal convictions. He picked up a photo of his family, his expression softening as he thought of Anna. Despite her betrayal, he couldn't ignore the role his own neglect and ambition had played in their fractured marriage. "Donald," Malcolm interrupted gently, stepping into the room. "The press wants a statement about Victor's arrest." Trump nodded, setting the photo down. "They'll get it, but not now." Downstairs, Pedro adjusted the tie of his new suit. It felt strange to wear something so formal, but Trump had insisted. "You're not just some street kid anymore," Trump had said. "You're part of something bigger now." Pedro smiled at his reflection in the mirror, feeling a sense of pride and purpose he'd never known before. For the first time, he had a place to belong, a future to look forward to. Trump entered the room, his usual commanding presence softened by a rare smile. "Looking sharp, kid," Trump said. Pedro grinned. "Thanks, Mr. Trump, for everything." "You earned it," Trump replied. "Now let's talk about what's next." Over the next few weeks, Trump worked to rebuild his life and strengthen the relationships around Donondi. He invited Pedro to join his team as a junior advisor, offering him mentorship and guidance. "You've got instincts most people can only dream of," Trump said during one of their meetings. "I want you to learn how to use them." Pedro threw himself into his new role, eager to prove himself. He attended meetings, took notes, and even offered insights that impressed Trump's senior staff. The fallout from Victor's betrayal forced Trump to reevaluate his priorities. He began reaching out to those he had alienated, mending relationships where he could. One evening, he visited Anna in the rehabilitation center where she had been staying since the conspiracy unraveled. "Anna," Trump said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. She looked up, surprised by his presence. "Donald, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk," he said, sitting across from her. "I know I haven't been the best husband. I know I've hurt you in ways I didn't realize." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "I let my anger get the best of me. I just wanted you to see me, Donald, to see how much I was hurting." Trump nodded, his own emotions breaking through. "I see you now. And I'm sorry." Their conversation marked the beginning of a fragile reconciliation. It wouldn't be easy, but both were willing to try. As Pedro settled into his new life, his influence on Trump became evident. His unwavering loyalty and fresh perspective reminded Trump of the importance of honesty and human connection. One day, Pedro approached Trump with an idea. "Mr. Trump," he said, "what if we start a program to help kids like me, give them a chance to succeed?" Trump considered the proposal, nodding slowly. "I like it. Let's make it happen." Together, they launched a mentorship initiative, providing opportunities for underprivileged youth to learn and grow. The program quickly gained attention, casting Trump in a new light. Though still polarizing, Trump's actions began to reflect a newfound sense of balance. His speeches were less combative, his decisions more thoughtful. He remained unapologetically himself, but showed glimpses of the man Pedro had helped him become. In private moments, Trump often marveled at how far they had both come. "You changed my life, kid," Trump admitted one evening. Pedro laughed. "You changed mine first, Mr. Trump. We're even." Years later, Pedro stood on a stage, addressing a crowd of young people at a mentorship event. Now a confident and accomplished young man, he spoke about the lessons he had learned from Trump. "Sometimes, the most unlikely people can teach you the most important lessons," Pedro said. "Donald Trump taught me about resilience, loyalty, and the power of second chances." In the audience, Trump watched with pride, his legacy forever intertwined with the boy who had embodied him in more ways than one. As the applause thundered, Trump leaned over to Malcolm. "Not bad for a street kid, huh?" Malcolm smirked. "Not bad at all." The story of betrayal, redemption, and unlikely friendship had come full circle, leaving a legacy of hope in its wake. If you want to know the story of Waitress, how Donald Trump note changed his whole life, visit Storyboat for that story.